Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. I am Cindy, the LD Educator. And for those of you who watched my first two videos, thank you so much. This is my third video this month. This is kind of my little attempt to do Vlogmas, but staying true to the type of information that I give out, which is about education, particularly special education. Today, someone tagged me on a post from one of the stories from Humans of New York, and it touched me so much that I really wanted to share it with you guys and then talk about, as a parent, how are you aiding in the success or failure of your students? So here's the story from Humans of New York. I've blacked out a lot of it, but I do remember that recess was a nightmare for me. My mom told me later that she would sometimes hide in the bushes, and when she saw me sitting by myself, she'd start crying. The diagnosis was selective mutism. I'll get so anxious around people that I physically couldn't speak. I'll get a rock in my throat, and it would feel like that moment right before you faint, when everything sounds so far away. It could be lonely at school. I was the only student with a full-time aide. I was the only one who held up a sign when the teacher called attendance. It doesn't feel good to be different, but my parents did everything they could to minimize that feeling. Every night before I went to bed, my mother would say, "You're a terrific kid, and I love being your mommy." When my school had a Halloween parade, she knew I'll be too anxious to do it alone, so she dressed up as Minnie Mouse and marched right alongside me. She was always very attentive to my emotions, but she was also a lawyer, so she made sure that my rights were being respected. She knew that the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act promised a free, appropriate public education, and that's exactly what she wanted for me. She once shut down my entire elementary school for an in-service day, and the entire faculty was taught to ask me yes or no questions so that I could nod and reply. She wanted me in a mainstream classroom, having mainstream experiences, so that I would never be left behind. And by the time I hit 5th grade, I was able to speak. It didn't happen all at once, but I grew more and more confident. I got better at making friends. I joined the debate team in high school. Recently, I graduated from Cornell and completed my senior thesis on disabilities rights, which I defended verbally. All of this was possible because of my mother. She was beside me the entire time. I took the LSAC in January, and even though the test was 5 hours long, my mom waited in the lobby. She gave me the biggest hug when I walked out. When I asked her why she didn't leave, she said, "I don't know. I just wanted to be here in case you needed anything at all." So the first thing that jumped out at me about this story is the fact that this mother is a well-informed advocate for her child. Not only that, she fights for her child's right to be in a mainstream environment. And so that's the first question for you. How are you fighting? How are you being an advocate for your child? How are you making sure that your child is getting everything that they are entitled to? Not only that, this young lady, and she had to kind of grow up, her mother had to kind of grow her up, teaching her about her own rights, because it obviously looks like she goes on to college and she majors in disability rights, right? And so she knows what she's entitled to as well. So another question is, are you passing on the torch to your child? I recently posted a video about 4 ways to self-advocate. And my question to you is, one, if you did not see that video, make sure you check that out. But are you teaching your child how to advocate for himself or herself? Like, I think that's one of the most saddening parts of what I do, and I guess the region or the area that I work in. I work in an urban context, and so especially when I was in public education, I always worked in areas where resources were slim to none, where parents didn't necessarily know their rights and they did not know how to advocate for their child. They did not know how to request. They didn't even know that they had a right to request some things. And so it was very, very disheartening for me to work in a setting where I knew kids could have more, that they needed more, but they just weren't getting the services. And so I think as parents, not only should we advocate for our child or children, we need to make sure that we're teaching them how to advocate for themselves. And self-advocating simply means knowing who you are, knowing what it is that you need in order to be successful, and then not to be ashamed to speak that, to give words to that, to tell people and to ask what you need. You know, she said that my mom knew, according to this particular law, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, that she was entitled to a free, appropriate education. And so here's a young lady. Now, obviously, I don't have a psychological or her IEP, so I'm not sure everything she was dealing with in totality, but she seems like an extremely intelligent young lady. But she's saying there was a point when she had a full-time aide. As a teacher, particularly in the context in which I have and currently teach in, you don't see that often. You don't see many kids who, I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure she's highly intelligent, having a personal aide. I've seen so many kids who may not have had her intellect or who have had more severe disabilities impacting their education not get an aide, which it is so disheartening, because when I see someone with that level of intellect and then compare it to some of the students that I've worked with, that I've seen, and I'm like, but they didn't receive that. The question comes back. One, did that parent know that their child was potentially entitled to that? Two, did that parent actually fight for that? So as parents, we have to be our child's first advocate. And then I can't say this enough, we have to turn over the keys to them. And the only way that we can turn over the keys to them is to prepare them to be able to use their own voice to speak and tell people what they need so that they can get the things that they're entitled to, so that they can also grow up to be successful like this young lady. Another thing that just totally blew my mind was this young lady's recollection of the fact that her mother was successful in getting in service for not the child's teachers, but the entire school. OMG. Every teacher there had to sit in an in-service and to be taught how to ask yes and no questions so that the young lady could respond with a nod of yes or no. That is powerful. I can't express enough how teachers are lacking the educational or training in order to effectively deal with some of the things that our students come to school with. And so once again, kudos to this mom who was able to say, you know what, this is what my child is dealing with, and this is what you need to do in order to effectively work with her. And if you don't know, I'm going to make sure you get the training that you need. It is no secret that there is a shortage of special education teachers. At this point, it's probably a shortage of teachers in general, and particularly special education teachers. And a lot of times people think just because a child has an IEP, they think that that's a lack of intelligence. They think that a lot of them are so low functioning, anybody can just come in and work with them. Hooray, hurrah. And it's simply not the case. You would be amazed at how many special education classrooms are being filled by long-term subs or people who are first-year teachers. Not to say that there is anything wrong with first-year teachers, because we all been there, right? But there also have been a rise in programs that you can get a degree in 2 months and 3 months. And once again, not to say that there was anything wrong with that, but if there was a learning curve for me as a special education teacher who went to school 4 years to learn how to do it, how much more of a learning curve would it be for someone who took a crash course, for someone who's just a long-term sub? And so with that being said, parents have to be more vigilant. In this child's story, and I'm sure she had millions of great teachers, because teachers are great. I can't say that enough. Teachers are great, and I thank each and every teacher who makes the decision to show up to work with our students, no matter what their level of skill is or no matter how long that they've been teaching. I'm sure this young lady had exceptional teachers, and I'm sure that she had teachers who marked her life in a most profound, positive way. But when she told her story, it was her mother that she was able to credit her success with, her being able to be where she is today, her mother. And that's the thing that I want to stress to parents. Although they are wonderful teachers, I have my teachers who I can stand up and say, if it wasn't for this teacher, but that credit goes to my mother. My mother didn't have as many resources as this child's mom did. She didn't know what this child's parent knew. Like, she couldn't fight for me the way that this young lady's mother fought for her, because she didn't have the knowledge. She didn't have the skill, but she was passionate over me. She loved me, and she showed up for me. She asked questions for me. She poured what she had into me and did what she could where she was for me. And that was enough. I think a lot of times parents they get a little intimidated. Special education is complex. And when you're talking about federal law and then down to the state, it's a lot. I'm telling you, it's a lot for teachers. You have a lot of teachers. I am involved in many teacher groups, special education groups on Facebook. And we are constantly asking questions of each other. Oh, how did this work again? Now, what was the law behind this? And then what is best practices for this? It is so much. So we don't expect for you to know it all, but you should have an expectation that you are going to be the force in your child's life that will determine their success or failure. And I say, set them up for success. And in order for you to set them up for success, you are going to have to advocate for them. And then in turn, you're going to have to teach them to advocate for themselves. You are going to have to model what they need to be doing. There should be an open line of communication. You should not be afraid to ask questions. Don't be intimidated. I think this is the perfect story to let us know that no matter the role that teachers play in the lives of students, the role of the parent is bigger and more than anything. And even after this young lady has been successful, and it sounds like she is getting ready to go perhaps to law school, right? Her mother is still there in her corner, not because she exactly needs her, but just in case. So you be that just in case for your student. All right, guys, if this has added any value to you, I want you to make sure that you give it a thumbs up. If you're new to my channel, make sure you go back and watch some of my videos. And if you like the type of information or the content that I put out, please subscribe to my channel. I hope you are enjoying your time during these holidays. Make sure you stay safe. All right, you guys be good.